All right, welcome back to the Level Up Grappling Podcast. Coach Brian here, straight out of Mission Viejo, California, PCI Jiu-Jitsu. We've got, if you guys listen to this show by now, there is one person that I talk about more than anybody else. And it is with great honor to introduce you all today to one of the greatest legends of American wrestling, Mark Schultz. So we actually have a lot of questions we've compiled for Mark today. And the way we got Mark on is Mark and Adam know each other quite well. So I'm going to let Adam take the lead on us. We're going to be nice and quiet and chime in if and when I have to. But we've compiled some amazing questions today, and we're going to let this get going. Mark, thank you so much for being here. Adam, take it away, sir.
My pleasure.
Okay. Yeah, it's great. Thanks again, Mark, for coming on. I know it was pretty difficult to organise at the start, but we got there, and it's all good. I just want to let you run amok for a little while and tell your story, man, and then we'll get into some questions. Like anything you want to say and promote and anything like that from right from the start. Go to it, my friend.
Well, I've told this story so many times. It's it's easy for me to tell, but I don't want to talk too long. Yeah, I was born at Stanford Hospital in Palo Alto, California, and I lived with my grandparents up until I was 8 years old, and they were both Stanford professors. My grandmother was a medical professor. She's a doctor. They're both doctors. He was a professor of ichthyology. He invented the salmon ladder, and he discovered the home stream theory, where salmons return to the rivers to spawn before they die. And so he invented the salmon ladder to help them get back up above the dams so they could get back to their home stream before they die. And he, and then in about third, fourth grade, we moved to, my parents were divorced when I was 3, and we moved to Ashland, Oregon, for my mom to take a job as a costume designer at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. And my dad, he was a professional, he was a drama professor. He had his own professional comedy club he used to perform at every week. And he was an actor, director, playwright, songwriter. He plays the piano. He's a really talented artist. And so I grew up in this house of scientists on my grandparents' side, and my parents, which were entertainers, or they were in the entertainment business. And so when we moved to Oregon, my brother and I stayed in this they called it the bunkhouse. It was more like a big dog house. It was freezing cold. And my dad tried to come up and visit us one night, and he was just so cold he couldn't do it. He had to go back in the house. And me and Dave lived in that thing for 3.5 years. It was a dirty existence. I don't think we washed our clothes one time. And we slept on these cots and these sleeping bags, which was a tremendous difference from living with my grandparents. I mean, I was living like a king with them. And here I am up in Oregon living like a pauper. So for 3.5 years, we were in there. And then Dave was a gigantic kid relative to other kids in his classroom. And they thought he was retarded because he couldn't read. But he had dyslexia. And most dyslexic people they're more intelligent than the average kid. And so when they put him in these remedial reading classes, he hated it because he was way smarter than these other kids that were in that class. They didn't know what dyslexia was back in early 1960s or whatever. So one time some kid made fun of him, and he took that kid and cracked his skull on the concrete, and they had to take him away in an ambulance. And he became known as the toughest kid in school. And so kids were kind of scared of me because they were scared of him. And then he started wrestling. I think one of his teachers told him that if he got into wrestling, it would help his dyslexia. And so he got into it, and it did. It helped a lot. He started as a seventh grader. He went 3-3-1 on the junior high JVs. And then next year he made varsity and he took fourth in the state. And then the next year, in the ninth grade, he took second in the World Schoolboy Championships. And and then my mom got this boyfriend that didn't like us, and so she sent me and Dave back down to live with our dad in Palo Alto. And my brother Dave and I, we went to Jordan Junior High School, and we would go over to Palo Alto High School. Well, he would go over to Palo Alto High School to wrestle with the high school kids. That's one thing he was always doing. Every time, like when in junior high, he'd wrestle with high school kids. In high school, he'd wrestle with college kids. So he's always wrestling people way better than him, which it's a huge advantage. So anyway, one day I went with him to the high school, and I met the coach Ed Hart, who this last August was inducted into the California chapter of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. And he said to me, I don't know why he said this. He goes, I bet I could teach you a backflip in 5 minutes. So he did. And I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. So I went out for the gymnastics team. And so whenever me and Dave would go over to Palo Alto High School, his nickname is Pally. When we go over there, I would go off with the gymnasts and I would train gymnastics while Dave would be training with wrestling. And then I became the Northern California all-around state gymnastics champion for my age group, 15 and 16-year-olds. But I wasn't happy with who I was. I couldn't defend myself, and I didn't like that. And my brother, who was supremely confident, that's one of the reasons he got into wrestling, was so he could maintain his dominance over the kids in his class, because he was used to being the toughest kid in school. And then in the sixth grade, a couple of kids, they flunked, I think, 2 grades, and they were huge. And they came into his class, and I don't think he liked that. So anyway, he around the 11th grade, I decided to quit gymnastics, and I wanted to learn how to fight. And I didn't know how. I wanted to pick the best martial art, and I didn't really know what that was. Nobody in America really knew what the best martial art was. And I mean, it wasn't until the UFC came to America we figured it out. But back then, we had Bruce Lee movies, we had Black Belt magazine. We're just sort of grasping at straws, And so I was looking at Bruce Lee, and here he is kicking the crap out of like 20 guys at a time. And I was like, man, if he can beat 20 guys at a time, I could beat at least one guy, my brother Dave. So I couldn't find a Bruce Lee studio in Medford, Oregon, and I found a Chuck Norris studio, and his style is called Tang Sudo. And so I started taking Tang Sudo for about 4 months, and um, my brother, who is now a senior in high school, and he is the number one recruit in the nation. And coaches from all over the country were coming to Oregon. Well, he was visiting me in Oregon for a very short time, but they were coming to see him in California and Oregon, trying to recruit him. And one day, Ron Finley, the head wrestling coach of Oregon University, comes down. He's recruiting him, and Bob Ream, who's the coach of Southern Oregon University, was called Southern Oregon College back then, but uh, they were giving their recruiting sales pitch, and then they turned and looked at me, and they said to Dave, "What's your little brother doing?" Uh, and Dave just said, "Oh, he's just a pothead." And I was like, "Why did you say that in front of these guys?" And so when I started wrestling, after what I think during that visit, uh, he said something really disrespectful to me, and I forget what it was, but I thought, okay, now I'm going to show this guy who the real boss of the family is with my 4 months of Tang Sudo training. And so we went out in the front yard, and I took a swing at him, and he double legged me and got the mount and turned my face into raw meat. And I was so humiliated that night. I spent the night in the car. And then he, but it made me realize that the striking arts were no match for the grappling arts. And so I decided to quit Tang Sudo and go out for the wrestling team. And that's what I did. I went out for the wrestling team the very next day, and I wasn't very successful. My record my junior year was 4 wins and 6 losses. And then the coach kicked me off the varsity, even though I was winning all my challenge matches, or most of them, to make the varsity team. He kicked me off the team anyway because I wasn't good enough in competition. And so I went and complained to the principal that he created this challenge match system. I've won under his system, and then he kicks me off. It's not fair. And the principal agreed with me and forced him to put me back on the team. But my relationship was destroyed by that point by going to the principal, so I couldn't wrestle for him anymore. So I transferred back to Palo Alto, and where my gymnastics coach, my old gymnastics coach, who was going to be also my wrestling coach. And so over the summer, I grew 30 pounds from a 130-pound junior to a 159-pound senior. And I'm starting my senior year as the brother of the guy who just had the greatest high school senior year in history. I mean, Dave's high school senior year is incredible. When he was in high school, when he was a senior, he went to the Great Plains and he pinned the two-time NCAA champion and the NCAA OW, and he also beat the World Cup champion at that tournament. And so that qualified him to the Tbilisi tournament. Tbilisi is this tournament in Russia and Georgia that, like, there's 10 Russians at each weight that we're all capable of winning the worlds. It's a really tough tournament, toughest tournament in the world. Anyway, Dave goes over they didn't want to bring Dave because they thought that his victory at the Great Plains was kind of a fluke, and he was just a high school kid. And so Newt Koppel, the head of the AAU, which was the national governing body at the time, didn't want to bring him. But all the other wrestlers got together and they said to Newt, "You got to bring him. He qualified." And so Newt reluctantly brought him, and he ended up placing higher than any other American on that U.S. team at Tbilisi. He took a silver medal. And then he comes back from Tbilisi, and he missed the league championships in California. The way that the California state championships goes, it starts off, you go to your league, then you go to your region, then you go to your section, then you go to state. And he comes back, and he had missed the league championship. So my coach petitioned to have him wrestle in the region as the 4th seed. So everybody agreed that Dave had to go into the state qualifiers, and he won the region, won the section, and he pinned his way through state, except for his final match was 12-2. And this is at a weight above his normal weight. He was a 159 pounder like me, but he wrestled at 170. So he wins the state, and then he goes to the National Open Greco-Roman Championships, and he wins that, and he gets the most falls in the least amount of time. Now, this, because his high school senior year was so great, after he was killed, they named the award for the best high school kid in the country and the best high school kid in each state, the Dave Schultz High School Excellence Award. So they give that out every year now. So now here I am starting my senior year. I'm the brother of the guy who just completed the greatest high school senior year in history, and I didn't win a tournament all year long. I was undefeated in dual meets, but I went to we were scheduled for 3 tournaments. The Cabrillo tournament, I broke my toe and I couldn't go. The Alisal tournament, I got beat my first round and I was eliminated. And the Monte Vista tournament, I took 3rd. Those are the only experiences I had in wrestling tournaments. But then at the end of the year, a miracle. I won the league, which was 9 schools. It was the first tournament I ever won in high school. And then that qualified me for the region, which was 20 schools, and I won that. And that qualified me for the Central Coast section, which was 90 schools. And I got to the finals against Joe Guillory from James Lick High School. And Joe's only loss of the year was to my teammate, Jeff Newman, who was at the weight above me. And Jeff went undefeated all year. And he ended up wrestling for Lehigh in college. And he actually beat Dwayne Goldman one time, which was crazy. It was like the upset of the year. Anyway, he beat Joe Guillory, and so I get to the finals against Guillory, and I catch him with this side roll that I learned from this Stanford wrestler named Bob McNeil. I call it the McNeil side roll, and I did that to him, caught him on his back for 5, and beat him by a point. And I was named the outstanding wrestler, and that qualified me for the state. So I go to state, and Joe Guillory gets beat first round at state, 7-2. And I was like, man, these guys at state are super tough. But I had studied this Eastern Indian teacher named Jiddu Krishnamurti. Bruce Lee and Albert Einstein are big fans of Krishnamurti. Anyway, this guy, he changed my whole life. And anyway, at the first round at state, I beat the guy that was 5th in the southern section by 1 point. And then I go up against the number 1 seed, Tim Johnson from Hogan High School, and he's beating me by 1 point with 10 seconds to go, and I get an escape to go into overtime, and I caught him with a banana split in overtime and beat him. And that put me in the semifinals, and this guy was from Poway, which is a perennial powerhouse in California, Poway High School. He took me down, rode me the whole first period. Second period, I McNeil side roll him for 5. and he's fighting so hard to get off his back, he can't even get away. He's so exhausted. His third period. So now I'm in the finals, and this guy was my third undefeated guy. His name was Chris Bodine. I wrestled him in college. He went to Arizona State. He's a great guy. And he takes me down. He rides me for about a minute. I escape. He takes me down immediately, and I escape at the end of the period. Scores 4-2. Second period, I catch him with a McNeil side roll for 2 and ride him out. Third period, he's down. All he's got to do is escape and then keep me from taking him down to win the state. And he stands up, breaks my lock. Right at the last second, I grabbed his leg, and I'm hanging on for dear life. And I don't know what to do because I'm thinking this could be my last match ever. Because my plan was to go join the Marines and meet new and interesting people and kill them. No. So I did something I never did before. I did a back suplex with a single leg, and miracle upon miracles, he landed on his back. I slapped in a half Nelson and cradled him for 3 and won the state. So now I'm the only California state champion to this day that's never won a tournament prior to the state qualifiers. So all the time that I'm doing this, my brother is off at Oklahoma State, and he is crushing the competition at Oklahoma State. He's named Freshman of the Year. He took third in the NCAAs, and his record was 30 wins, 5 losses, and 1 tie. And he comes back from Oklahoma State, and now we're the same size. And so he'd go, okay, Mr. State Champion, let's go work out. And if I said no, he'd be like, you pussy. And then I'd go, okay, let's go. So we go. This happened like every day. And he would just kill me like 20-0 every day. And I was just like, what is wrong with me? There must be something wrong with me. I'm built better than he is. We're the same weight class. Why can't I score on this guy? I didn't score on him. I didn't score 1 point on him all summer long. And so finally I thought to myself, every time I shoot, he counters my shots and scores. So I wonder what would happen if I just never shot. And so I just started like blocking him off and backing up and breaking his grips, and I just became this incredible staller, and I got really good at I had like this impenetrable defense. I could move forward. And that really helped my confidence a lot because instead of getting killed like 30-0, I was only getting beat like 1 or 2-0, and that helped me a lot. I knew if I could keep Dave from scoring on me, I could keep anybody from scoring on me. So I got 2 scholarship offers. One was from Oklahoma State, which is where Dave was going, and one was from UCLA, which was 400 miles south of me, and from where I was living in Palo Alto. And I went on a recruiting trip to Oklahoma State, and they said, well, Dave said that I probably shouldn't go there because he's thinking of leaving. Because the head coach, Tommy Chesbro, wanted Dave to stay at 150 because he just recruited this really good 158-pounder named Ricky Stewart, who, by the way, got caught in a terrible fire and lost some limbs and fingers and just, oh man, it's a nightmare. Anyway, they recruited Ricky to be the 158-pounder. And so Dave didn't like that. He wanted to go up to 158 the next year so he wouldn't have to cut his balls off to make 150. But Chesbro wouldn't allow it because Stewart was there now. So Dave told me he's probably not going to stay at Oklahoma State. So I took plus I thought even if he was happy at Oklahoma State, I thought to myself, it's probably not a good idea for me to jump into the Oklahoma State wrestling room with all these killers in there that could destroy my confidence. Because, your confidence is either destroyed or it's built every day, and usually at the expense of somebody else. So I decided not to go to Oklahoma State. I decided to go to UCLA. I got a full ride. So UCLA was a great place to have freshman year because, there's movie stars walking around, girls in bikinis everywhere. The beach is right down the street. I mean, it's just incredible. It's a great, great school. And I had a lot of fun there my freshman year, but there was a lot of turmoil within the coaching staff. The head coach and assistant coach were always fighting with each other. And I thought, why don't you just fire the guy, But it created so much conflict, and UCLA was not a wrestling school. It was a basketball and football school, and they didn't want to put any more time, energy, or money into wrestling. So it was a real rinky-dink small program. We didn't get any fans at our matches, and so me and Dave, we made the junior world team that year, and during that training camp, we met Jim Humphrey, the assistant coach at Oklahoma, and we thought, this guy's really good. He's really cool. He's still competing, and he was a world silver medalist. And we thought, why don't we just go to school with him? So we did. We were transferred to Oklahoma, and the head coach didn't even recruit me, or he just, I don't know, he came to on a recruiting trip out to Palo Alto way after we already decided to go to Oklahoma. So anyway, Stan Abel was the head coach at Oklahoma, and Jim Humphrey was the assistant. So the first day of practice at Oklahoma, the coach takes us out to this duck pond, which has a 2-mile track around it, and we race around this duck pond, and it's about 107 degrees out, 98% humidity. I mean, I'm from California. I never experienced weather like this before in my life. And I was like, how am I going to get? It was so exhausting. It was so hot. It was like running on the surface of the sun. I was like, how am I going to get through 4 years of this? But I used these teachings from Jiddu Krishnamurti to survive mentally and physically. I had this guy in my weight class named Israel Shepherd. This dude was built like Hercules. He was the fastest guy in the class. He's a black dude, and he would cornrow his hair into these really harsh, rough cornrows. And every time we wrestled, he'd grind those cornrows into my face. He'd scrape all the skin, my first layer of skin off. I mean, my face would be raw afterwards. And then I'm going to have to beat this guy just to make the team. This guy was third in the NCAAs. And I was like, how am I going to do this? I'm going to have to commit a murder or something. So anyway, we were going, me and him, we were out for blood, man, every practice. And man, it was brutal. And one day I noticed some of my headgear the padding on my headgear was wearing away. And one day he went to headbutt me, and I turned, and the aluminum underneath the padding was shining through, and I cut him with that aluminum. And I thought, maybe I just found the answer to Israel's cornrows. But anyway, me and Israel, Stan Abel was a great coach. He knew he had a problem. He had too much talent, and he had 3 guys that were all pretty close to each other, but at 2 weight classes. So he redshirted Israel. He put Dave in at 158 and had me go up to 167. And that year, I won the NCAAs against Mike Deanna, who was from Iowa, and um, that was, man, that year was just, it was a brutal year, man. It just, and we trained just so freaking hard. And anyway, the next year, I Stan Abel and I agreed that I'd go up to 177 and try to challenge this Iowa wrestler named Ed Bannock. Ed Bannock is one of the most dominant wrestlers that ever walked on a mat for Iowa, and I basically moved into his weight class, and he had beaten me 4 times before, and this guy was in such great shape. I was on the world team with him in 1983, and he ran a 5-minute mile. I mean, that's incredible for a 198 pounder. And his nickname was the Horse. And I think the reason they called him the Horse was because he could run like a horse. Anyway, I was not a great aerobic athlete. I was a great anaerobic athlete. And I had my max VO2 tested one time, and it came out as the lowest number. They measure it in milliliters of oxygen per kilogram body weight per minute exercise. Well, I had 50 mils per kilogram per minute. Well, that's like 8 points lower than any other world or Olympic champion that's ever been tested. Looks like you got all these guys on this list, then you got the second lowest guy, and you got like 50 feet of shit, and then you got me. I was like, what the? So anyway, I tried to adapt my body to my style to where I could win wrestling matches. And thank God the number of minutes was reduced after 1981. In 1981, college matches were 8 minutes long and freestyle matches were 9 minutes long. The next year, freestyle matches were cut to 6 minutes and college matches were cut to 7. So that worked in my favor. And so the next year, I made it to the finals against Ed Bannock. And you can see this match on YouTube. It's one of the most entertaining matches, or it's ranked one of the most entertaining matches in NCAA history. And it was a real high flying match, and I beat him, and I was named the NCAA Outstanding Wrestler that year. And there was a book that just came out called The Golden Age of Amateur Wrestling, the 1980s. And in that book, they did this poll where they asked all the wrestlers, all the coaches, who were the best college wrestlers of the 80s. Well, I was ranked number 1, and Ed Bannock was ranked number 2. Anyway, Ed Bannock went up a weight. He comes up to me after that match, and he says, "What weight are you going next year?" I said, 177. He said, "I'm going 190. And he did. He went up to 190. He won his 3rd NCAA title, and then we both made the Olympic team. And matter of fact, my brother and I, and Ed Bannock has a twin brother also named Lou Bannock. Ed and Lou made the Olympic team, and all 4 of us won gold medals at the 84 Olympics. And the problem with the 84 Olympics was because we were so dominant, everybody thought, well, that's not really fair that, you guys got these gold medals. And the Russian boycott was the year of the Russian boycott. And so none of the Soviet bloc countries were there. Well, Soviet bloc countries were they were the most dominant wrestling countries in the world, and so uh, we both made the. There were 7 gold medals at the '84 Olympics, but because of the boycott, some of the weight classes were wiped out. All the talent was gone. But in other weight classes, it wasn't affected at all. And 2 of those weight classes that weren't affected was Dave's and mine. Dave still had the world champion uh, at in the 1981 world champion from West Germany, and I still had the European champion that beat all the Soviet bloc countries in the European championships. His name was Reza Karabajak from Turkey, and the way you so so the way you bracket the Olympic team tournament, the Olympic tournament is you step on a scale, buck naked, you reach into a bucket, you pull out an egg, and you open it up, and inside is a number. Well, I pulled out the number 6. Well, Reza Karabajak is standing right behind me, and he gets on the scale, and he pulls out the number 8. So they put all the odd guys on one side of the bracket and all the even guys on the other. And that means first match, 2 is going to wrestle 4 and 6 is going to wrestle 8. I have the gold medal match, my very first match. And I am scared out of my mind, for lack of a better term. I go back to my hotel and I'm just staring at this wall for like 2 hours, just sitting, sweating, waiting for this match. And the match comes along and he does this limp arm to a high crotch. Well, I had seen this move that this Cuban had done to this guy from Paraguay or Uruguay or those Guay countries. And it's basically a double wrist lock. Double wrist lock is the same thing as the Brazilians call a kimura. When Brazilians came to America, they renamed the double wrist lock the kimura. Well, this Cuban did this move to this Paraguay guy and kicked him head over heels, and he did a forward roll and gave away 2 points. Well, when Karabajak grabbed my high crotch, I had done this move with the guy's head on the inside millions of times, but I never did it with the guy's head on the outside. But his head was on the outside, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to throw it. And I threw it, and he landed on his head, which stopped his momentum. But my momentum kept going, and I still had a hold of his arm, and his elbow snapped instantly, and he fell on his back, and I fell on top of him, and I'm looking back at the referees going, come on, call the pin, you know. He finally did call it. And then they took him to the hospital. And then they came back 8 hours later and filed a protest against me. And they said I was excessively brutal. And so instead of kicking me out of the tournament, they gave that guy the victory of that match we had. And they put there's a rule in all sports that you cannot reverse. If a judgment call is made on the field of play, it cannot be reversed after the fact. So by them letting me stay in the tournament, I still had another match that day. I had it against New Zealand, and the referee screwed me so bad in that match, but I still won by quite a bit. But like every time I did a gut wrench, they weren't very clear on what you had to do to get 2 points and not give 2 points to your opponent. Apparently, if you didn't arch hard enough, they'd give 2 and 2. Well, every time I did a gut wrench, they'd give my opponent 2 points along with my 2 points. So anyway, I beat the guy, and then I'm sitting up in the stands and with my mom, and they said, I heard the loudspeakers come on, and it said Mark Schultz has just been disqualified from that match with Reza Karabajak, and just Karabajak has that victory. And my mom freaks out. She thinks I've been kicked out of the tournament, but I had already worked all this out in my head, like long before. So I was like, "Don't worry about it, Mom. It's a double elimination tournament, and if I keep winning, I can still win." So then I had a very, very, probably the closest match I've ever had in my life against the Canadian Chris Reinke. He ended up taking a bronze medal, but man, I tell you, it was pure luck. I mean, the fact that I beat him, it was just, what happened was he was beating me 2-2 criteria tiebreaker after the first period. And so I knew I had to score or I wasn't going to win. So I took him down, I gut wrenched him, and the referees gave me 1 for the takedown and 2 for the gut wrench. Well, now the score is 5-2. And I'm thinking to myself in my head, I can give away 3 takedowns and still win the criteria tiebreaker because I have a 2-pointer. But what the referees did, the mat judges didn't agree with the referee, and the mat judges only gave me a point for the takedown and a point for the gut wrench. And so now the score is 4-2. So I'm looking at the scoreboard while I'm wrestling. It was 5-2, and now I look at it again and it's 4-2. I don't know what's going on, but in my mind I'm thinking, oh, I could have given 3 takedowns away. Now I can only give 2 takedowns away. But that's not true. If I had given 2 takedowns, I would have lost the tiebreaker criteria because we've got all 1-pointers. So as I'm doing this math in my head and I'm wrestling at the same time, Chris takes me down. Now it's 4-3. And so in my mind, I'm thinking I can still give away a point and still win, but that wasn't true. So the referees have already cautioned me twice, and they hate my guts because I broke the Turk's arm. They think I'm dirty, and not only did they think I was dirty because I broke his arm, but the match right before I wrestled the Turk, Dave hurt the Yugoslavian's knee, and that guy had to be taken to the hospital. So in 2 matches in a row, they're like, Dave Schultz just sent this guy to the hospital, and then Mark Schultz, the next match, sends the guy to the hospital. What's up with these Schultz brothers? And so they assigned a special referee. I think it was Rafael Martinetti. I think maybe. I mean, anyway, I could be wrong, but they sent the number 1 referee in the world to watch me and Dave the rest of the tournament, and so we were under a microscope. But anyway, we ended up winning the tournament. Against Rinke, scores 4-3, and the referees, they've already cautioned me twice, and they're ready to throw me out. With my 3rd caution, they're going to throw me out, and I can tell they want to throw me out. So I thought, you know what? Throw caution to the wind and just take a shot and give up the takedown and win on the tiebreaker criteria. So I didn't even set it up. I just shot in, and he just happened to grab me in a front body lock, and I just happened to have this unstoppable counter to a front body lock. I call it a duck scoop. And so instead of giving away the takedown, I decided to duck scoop him, and I got the takedown, and I beat him 5-3. And at the end of the tournament, they give you the bracket sheet to take home with you if you're the winner. And so they gave me my bracket sheet. I took it home, and I put it on my wall, and it sat there for like a year. And I finally one day I was just looking at that bracket sheet, and I realized at that point, had I given that point away, I would have lost the tiebreaker criteria and the gold medal, and my life would have been ruined. I mean, from a simple mental mistake. And so it was the weirdest feeling in the world coming to that realization all alone in my office. It was just weird. I was like, oh, thank God, it didn't. But anyway, after that, there was a lot of publicity and stuff. I met Ronald Reagan at the Beverly Hilton, and when I was at Oklahoma, we had this kid named Bobby DeProspero, who was our 118 pounder. Well, his dad just happened to be the director of the Secret Service. So he's always standing next to Reagan. So he comes to Oklahoma and he meets me and Dave and all the other OU wrestlers. And he's kind of letting them know what it takes to be a Secret Service agent, because wrestlers make good Secret Service agents. So he's kind of recruiting a little bit, and he's there to see his son as well. And so he met me and Dave. So when we went to meet Reagan, he's standing right next to Reagan, and he yells at me and Dave. He goes, "Hey, Mark, Dave, come on up here." And so me and Dave walked through the velvet ropes, and I think I was the first guy to meet the president. And then I bent down to give Nancy a kiss on the cheek, and she turns and kisses me right on the lips. And I was like, anyway, I said, I didn't know what to say. So I said, "I'll vote for you." And Nancy goes, "Say it louder." And so anyway, we went on this 3-tour trip to Dallas and to New York City. And like on the plane, there was no rules on the plane. You know how the stewardesses make everybody sit down and buckle up? They couldn't control us. We were so out of control. It didn't matter what they said. It was chaos on that plane. And one guy, he took a magazine and it stood on, and while the plane's taking off, he surfs from the front of the plane to the back of the plane down the aisle on this magazine cover, which was plastic. I guess it was slippery enough. Anyway, that was just one thing that we did, but we were like shaking up champagne bottles and spraying them everywhere. We were just totally out of control. Anyway, that was a fun trip. And then the next year, I go to the World Championships in Budapest, Hungary, which is where my ancestors are from. And they're Hungarian, or one of my ancestors is a Hungarian Jew. I could actually get Hungarian citizenship by descent if I wanted to, but you have to be fluent in Hungarian, which is like the 4th hardest language in the world. I've tried it. Man, it's hard. Anyway, in Budapest, I had to face every wrestler that boycotted the '84 Olympics, and so I won the '85 World Championships, and that pretty much I'm the only '84 Olympic champion to win the '85 Worlds. And then 2 years later, I win the '87 Worlds on pure luck. I swear, it was the luckiest tournament of my life. I got cautioned out against the West German. I was beating him, and they cautioned me out. And I'm sitting outside, just sort of wondering what's going to happen. I'm gonna have to wrestle the defending world champion the very next match, and I wrestled him 4 times, and I beat him 3 times, and he was a 4-time Tbilisi champion. And anyway, I'm sitting outside the arena on the steps, and a friend of mine, he had a beer, and he just sort of dropped this beer in front of my face, and I'm like, hell with it. And so I started drinking this beer. I've never done this in my life. And drinking a beer right in the middle of the tournament. But that night, so in order for me to get to the finals, I had to either pin him, caution him out, or shut him out. And I shut him out 1-0, and that got me to the finals. And Alexander Nanev, I beat Alexander Nanev for a second time in the finals, and afterwards, all the winners were taken into the drug testing room, and they took me into the room, and I'm in there with this North Korean guy who just won, who was incredible. This guy is so incredible. He had an amazing match at 105. And so we're in there, and they ask us, you want beer, water, or juice? Well, we just won, so we're like, beer, of course, So we drinking all this beer, and we were drinking so much beer, we had to pee really bad. And they kept asking us, you got to pee yet? You got to pee yet? And we're like, no, we need more beer. So we're just holding it in, trying to drink more beer. And I don't know what it was, but every time he said something to me, I just thought it was the funniest thing. I just laughed my ass off. And every time I said anything to him, he thought it was the funniest thing. He'd laugh his ass off, probably because we were both drunk. But anyway, they finally gave us these pee bottles, but they were really little. And so we're peeing in these pee bottles, and we're getting urine all over the floor and over like my hands and on the tester's coat, and I just spilling it everywhere. Anyway, then that was 87 Worlds, and then in the 80, I had taken this job working for this idiot John DuPont, who ended up murdering my brother years later, and they made a movie about it. It was based on my life story, but they changed it. The director is such an idiot. He changed it from like a biographical movie to like a horror movie, and it's a terrible movie because he doesn't stick to my story. My book was turned into an Emmy-nominated documentary called Wrestling Demons. The UFC and Dana White produced it, and it was nominated for an Emmy. Well, it's basically just my story, the story that I wrote in my book. A lot of people don't like my book because they think it's a true crime story, but it's not. It's my autobiography, and so, anyway. God, you should read some of the comments in some of these reviews, and it's brutal. They're just anyway. I won the war, and then I made the '88 Olympic team, and I was so sick of dealing with this psychopath, John DuPont. He killed my motivation to wrestle anymore. And I was beating Rico Chiapparelli. It was really tough. He's the NCAA champion for Iowa. And I was beating him 8-0. And I just thought, you know what? I think I'm done wrestling. And I let him come back. He beat me 16-8. And I just went back to my hotel room and I started eating all this food. And that's it. I'm not going to wrestle anymore. And then my friend came in. His name was Hal Miles. He was the Virginia State coach, Virginia State University coach. And I had a couple wrestling camps there with him. I think I was the only white guy on the campus. I came out of that camp with rhythm, man. Anyway, I had a great time with Hal, and he came in. He talked to me. He goes, "Man, if you know you're gonna die and you got to do something for your kids, get up off your deathbed, go do it, and then come back and die." And so I decided, this is probably the last time I'm going to wrestle in the United States. So I'm going to go out. I'm going to change my tactics. I'm not going to worry about what the referees are doing. I'm going to turn this into more of a street fight. And that's what I did. And I pinned Chipperelli twice. And then I got on the scale. But before I got on the scale, Mike Sheets, the guy I'm going to have to wrestle the next day, he got on the scale and he made weight. And I got on the scale and he's standing right next to me. He sees that I'm 12 over from all the food I ate in that restaurant, in that room service. And so he's thinking, he's probably, I don't know if this is what he's thinking, but I'm assuming he's thinking that he's going to make the Olympic team by default because I'm not going to make weight. So I had 90 minutes to lose 12 pounds. So the first thing I did was I stuck my finger down my throat and I puked about 1.5 pounds up from that. And then I had about 80 minutes, I think, to lose 10.5 pounds. And so I got on this stationary bike and I put the stationary bike right out in front of the arena. So as people were leaving the arena, some of my friends will see what I'm doing and I can recruit them to help me cut this weight because I had never cut that much before in such a short time. So Gene Mills, who's a really amazing wrestler, he stopped and helped me. My brother stopped and helped me. John Jura, who's a great wrestler, stopped and helped me. Jeff Callard, who was another Oklahoma guy, stopped and helped me. So I had all these people, helping me cut this weight. And I made weight with, I think, 10 seconds to spare. And then I beat Mike Sheets the next day, 6-2 first match, then 13-1 the second match. You can watch both those matches on YouTube if you want. But so I made the team. But when I got to the Olympics, it occurred to me during my semifinal match that I can't win for John DuPont's team. This guy he's tried to ruin my career. He's tried to undermine me every way he could. I mean, what he did to me and the other guys that were working there was like, it was the worst case of, financial manipulation you can imagine. I had a best friend from Oklahoma come to Villanova, and DuPont would just dangle this carrot out like, if you screw this guy over, your friend Mark, you can have this carrot, whatever it is. And he was doing that to us all the time. And it was pure evil. And the guy just, for somebody to do that in a sport like wrestling, it's so evil. Anyway, I could not win for his team after what he did. I mean, Andre Metzger and I were best friends in college. And so I just threw my last match. And it just happened to be from some guy from Turkey. I lost 14-0. I've never lost to anybody 14-0. But I just threw this match as like a protest to USA Wrestling and to DuPont that this is what happens when you don't support your wrestlers. Nowadays, wrestling's got a lot of support, but when I did it, there was no money at all. We were just trying to figure out all these different ways to survive. Anyway, it was terrible. So when I lost to that Turkish guy, and I heard there's a rumor going around Turkey that this second Turkish guy that I threw this match to got revenge for the first Turkish guy that I broke his arm. But I would have thrown that match to anybody. It wouldn't have mattered what country they were from, Mongolia, Russia, whatever. So I came back from the '88 Olympics as a loser, and I was so confused and dumbfounded. Anyway, I ended up becoming the assistant coach of Brigham Young University, which is an all Mormon school. And I joined the Mormon church mainly to get the job because I knew they wouldn't give a job to a non-Mormon. So I joined the church mainly to get the job, but I actually did believe the the Book of Mormon was true. And part of the reason I believed it was because everybody in Utah is a Mormon. And I was like, okay, if this was like a cult, like a brainwashed cult, it'd probably be a lot less people would be members, but everybody was a member. So if you don't join the Mormon church, you're kind of an outcast in a way. So I joined, and 3 years later, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu comes to America. And I'm sitting at my home one day, and I get this phone call from this blue belt Brazilian Jiu Jitsu guy named Steve Bishop. And he said, "Is this Mark Schultz, the Olympic champion?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "The best jiu-jitsu fighter in the world is in town. Do you want to fight him?" I was like, "What are the rules?" And he's trying to intimidate me. I hate this. He goes, "There are no rules." And I was like, "Really? No rules at all? What are we going to commit a homicide?" I was going to let him punk me. So I'm like, "All right, meet me in the BYU wrestling room a week from Thursday because I had to go to the NCAA's, and I'll waste this guy's ass." And so I walk into the wrestling room. I couldn't focus all week because I'd never been challenged like this before. I didn't know what was going to happen. For all I knew, we were going to commit a homicide. And so I walk into the wrestling room that day, and there's Hickson Gracie scooting on his butt, trying to hook the heels of my boss, Alan Albright. And as soon as I walk in the room, everybody stops what they're doing, and Hickson gets up, looks at me, and comes over to me and says, "Are you the guy?" I go, "Yeah, I'm the guy." "Are you the guy?" "Yeah, I'm the guy." And he goes, "What I do is a punch, elbow, knee, headbutt, but we're not going to do that today. We're going to do submission grappling until one of us taps out." So I was kind of relieved there wasn't going to be a homicide, and we went into the center of the mat, and I took him down. I had him in a cradle for about 20 minutes, and then finally my grip just gave out. 20 minutes is a hell of a long time to hold somebody in a cradle. I didn't know any submission holds. Matter of fact, if you open up a wrestling rule book and you look at all the moves that are against the rules, it's almost like a jiu-jitsu training manual. So I looked at I was on top of him, and he threw his legs around my upper body, and I kind of let him do it because I didn't really know what he was doing, and I was looking at him like, "Get off your back. Don't you have any pride?" But he doesn't care that he's on his back. So he throws me into a triangle, and I'm tapping out. And I thought that was the coolest move ever. So I go, "Let's go again." So we went again for another 20 minutes, and I've been on top of him the whole time, and I don't know what to do. I've done the double wrist lock in the Olympics, and I did some judo, so I knew how to keep my chin down and my elbows in, but I didn't really know anything other than that. And so I let him, I was on top of him for like 20 minutes, the second time, and I thought, well, I've been on top of this guy for 20 minutes. I can't get anything. Maybe I'll let him get on top of me. So I let him reverse me, and he immediately started weaving in this rear naked choke. And I'm tapping out again. And after I tapped out the second time, I he said, so we've been going for like 40 minutes. And afterwards, he said something to me that just made me love this guy. He goes, Mark, you're the toughest guy I've ever gone against. And I just thought, man, I want to be just like this guy. And I found out that he had a student living right there in Provo, Utah, the same city that I'm living in. And the guy that called me on the phone, he went on a mission, an LDS mission to Brazil, and he met Pedro Sauer down there, and he convinced Pedro to move to Provo, Utah, of all places. I mean, I'm thinking, what's Pedro doing in the middle of the heart of Mormonism? It makes no sense. And so one day, I just went over to his club and I signed up for his class. And he became my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructor for 3 years. And then one day I get a call from him and he says, Dave Beneteau, the national heavyweight wrestling champion of Canada, is coming down to train jiu-jitsu with us, and he wants to wrestle with you. Would you wrestle with him? I said, yeah. So he comes down, and we wrestled with each other for about 2 weeks. And the last last day we wrestled, I slammed him, and he rolled on one of his metacarpals. He broke this metacarpal right here, and I took him to the hospital. And the doctor said, if we put a cast on, obviously you can't fight. But if we open you up and join those bones together with a plate and screws, we can fix the break that way. And maybe you can put makeup on it and cover up. You can act like you're not really hurt. So he said, put a plate in. So they put the plate in, and I thought, he's going to get in trouble with that hand. So I'm going to go to Detroit, which is where UFC 9 was, and I'm going to throw the towel in when he gets in trouble with that hand. And so I went to Detroit with him, and in the press conference, somebody ratted him out and said his hand was broke. And so the doctor came over and looked at his hand and told the promoter, and they said, you can't fight. And so I'm sitting there with Pedro Sauer, my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructor, is there right next to me. And he says to me, Mark, I know who Dave's going to fight. I can beat him. I think you can too. And so I went over to the promoter, and this is Bob Meyerowitz. This was before Dana White. I think Dana White bought it in UFC 31 or something. This is UFC 9. So I go over to Meyerowitz and I said, hey, what do you think about me taking Dave's place? And he said, and I quote, he goes, oh, that's a great idea. You're Olympic champion. When you lose, it'll be even better. I was like, but he was going to, I wasn't going to hit him because he was going to pay me. So I didn't say anything. I just said, can I have the night to think about it? And so he said, okay. So they're calling me all through the night, waking me up. And I keep telling them, you guys got to let me sleep or I'm not going to be able to fight. This is 8 years after my last wrestling match. So finally at 10 in the morning, they call me, I think for the fourth time. They said, you got to make a decision now or we're going to get someone else. So I called Pedro. I said, hey, let's go downstairs and talk with Meyerowitz. So we go downstairs, And I said to them, give me one more minute. And I went over to this corner to pray. And this is my LDS days. I was LDS for 30 years, but I'm I I don't believe it's true anymore. In fact, I know it's not. But the people are Mormon people are really great people. Uh, anyway, I went to this corner and I'm praying, and I got this. This my brother had been murdered by DuPont 4 months prior to the UFC 9. UFC 9 was on May 16th. My brother was murdered on January 26th. And I had this really strong feeling that either my brother or Christ or some entity was there with me telling me I have to fight. So I got up and I went over to Meyerowitz. I said, I'm doing it. We signed the contract. Me and Pedro went out back and I did some wind sprints to warm up. I got an AIDS test. Dave Beneteau gave me his cup. And one of Pedro's students brought a pair of wrestling shoes with him that were a size 10. That was the same as my size, which is another weird coincidence because I didn't go there with any gear or anything. I had some blue shorts I was going to wear to roll around with the Brazilians, but that was it. So that night, me and Gary Goodrich meet in UFC 9, and I won that match, and that ended my athletic career. So that's pretty much the story of my athletic career.
Nice. I'm sure there's
What do you
plenty
think,
of questions.
guys? Did I talk too much?
Not at all.
No, that was
Love it.
beautiful.
But I'm pretty sure there is a lot of questions from everybody. Get ready for it, Mark.
Yeah. So here's the first thing, because I've always said that I personally was not impressed with the first UFC because Hoist Gracie was there, but outside of Hoist Gracie, it was really primarily a bunch of hacks. They didn't, and I know for a fact they didn't want any wrestlers in. They didn't invite any Vale Tudo guys from Japan or Brazil. So it was definitely what I consider a rigged tournament. My assertion, and Mark, you can tell me if I'm wrong, is that if you or Dave were in there at UFC 1, you would have murdered Hoist. I don't think you would have made it out about 2 minutes.
Well, I don't want to. I have a black belt from Pedro Sauer, who got his black belt from Hickson Gracie. Mm-hmm. So I have a Gracie black belt. So I don't want to say anything bad about Hoist.
It's not bad, but I'm there's a certain. I think we have to look at things as a whole picture, because I'm a black belt. I'm a jiu-jitsu black belt as well. Adam's a jiu-jitsu black belt as well. But we also have a certain, I believe there's a hierarchy of grappling. I don't think it would have taken much for you or Dave to wreck shop in that first UFC. But if we just look at it objectively, let's talk about it objectively. It's not about criticizing anybody. Let's just objective tournament. How do you think you or Dave would have fared?
I think we would have done pretty good. One of the things that I don't think was advantageous. I've heard Hoist say that when he wears the gi, it's almost like another hand. I don't think the gi is. I don't think it's very good to wear in the octagon because it gives your opponents all these handles to grab, and what if the guy's not wearing a gi that you're fighting, you don't have any handles to grab on him. You can't choke him like if somebody's wearing a gi. So yeah, I think the gi would have been a detriment to I don't know. Did Hoist ever fight without a gi? Do you know?
He fought,
He fought
Matt
without
Hughes.
a gi.
Matt Hughes he fought.
Matt Hughes
And Matt Hughes took him down, rear naked, choked him.
destroyed him.
Destroyed him, basically.
Yeah, beat his ass first, belly down. And then the third fight he had with Sakuraba, he fought without a gi as well. Then he popped for a whole bunch of steroids and then ran off to Brazil. Never took his athletic commission hearing.
Okay.
So I don't think he won that fight anyways, but that's neither here nor there. But I think you and Dave just had the grit and the technical ability that had either of you been allowed into UFC 1 or invited, I don't think we would see that quote unquote Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu on the stage that it was.
Yeah, you remember UFC 4, I think it was, Dan Severn and Hoist
Yes.
Gracie met in the finals?
Yes.
And Hoist got him with
Triangle.
Wasn't it a rear naked choke? But it was off to the side kind of thing.
Almost like a bulldog
Anyway,
choke.
doesn't matter.
Triangle. Oh.
But I've done interviews. I've done two podcasts with Dan Severn, and the thing that impresses me about Severn is he had no submission training, he had no striking training going into UFC 4 or 5. He lost by submission to Hoist in UFC 4, but I think he got some submission training and some striking training after that for UFC 5, and that's when he won. And then he won the Ultimate, which was over in Denver, which I happened to be in Tank Abbott's corner. Tank Abbott came out and trained with me and the BYU wrestlers for about 2 months before UFC, before the Ultimate. And, he has Dave. His name's Dave Abbott. He's got a lot of guts, but he lost to Severn pretty bad. I mean, Severn is a world-class wrestler. I think he was 5th in the world. And just to make the world team, any world team, you've got to be the number one guy in your weight in your country. So as far as wrestling goes, there's no way Abbott was going to take down Severn. And so Severn took him down, beat him pretty bad, and won the Ultimate, which I was so, when the UFC came to America, it kind of like, it was almost like this new era where we're bringing back, the Roman gladiators, and everybody was kind of freaking out, and because the first UFC was promoted as having no rules, no holds barred, which wasn't really true, and I just wondered, how can they do that? But they had these 2 rules: no eye gouging and no biting, which tells you if you're in a real fight on the street, you should eye gouge and bite all you can. So, I got a list of. Last night I looked at all of the moves that were banned by the UFC, and man, you talk about an effective group of moves in a street fight. I mean, it's like anyway. Breaking fingers. Stuff was legal in UFC 9. You could break fingers. You pull his ears off. You could kick him in the nuts. You could grab his nuts. You could. I don't know. Just headbutts were legal. 12 to 6 elbows were legal. All that stuff was legal back then, and Anyway, yeah, Dan. Dan won the UFC. He won the Ultimate, and yeah,
How do you think you would have fared if you were allowed to continue fighting? Because if I recall correctly, I remember reading you said that BYU told you that you were not allowed to fight again, right? If you wanted to
yeah,
keep
there
your
was a
job.
lot of negative publicity after my fight. With, I mean, it was huge news. I thought it wouldn't even nobody even knew about it, but it turned out to be like the whole state knew about it. I would put a picture of me, a color picture with blood on the ground, on the cover of the Salt Lake Tribune, the biggest newspaper in Utah, and a lot of Mormon women were complaining, calling the president of BYU, complaining that a BYU faculty was turning God's children into hamburger. So I get called on the carpet in the president's office, and we have a new president now, Merrill Bateman, and he is a real hard ass. And a lot of people left BYU because of him. In a way, he was slashing and burning all these programs, and I think that's one of the reasons why wrestling was dropped at BYU. But he called me on into his office and he said, "What you did is not what we're about at BYU." And he said, "You can keep your job, but you can't fight anymore. Or you can go fight and you can quit your job, but you can't do both." And I had 3 kids that needed health insurance, so I kept my job. But I think I would have done okay. The only thing that was, I mean, I was 36 years old at the time that I fought in the UFC. And right afterwards, my lower back just went out on me. It's probably from my brother cranking on my lower back when I was younger. But I don't know how much longer I could have fought if I did go ahead. I was simply born in the wrong year, the wrong decade. If I would have been born like 2 decades, maybe 1 or 2 decades later, I probably could have fought enough to retire.
Yeah.
But I was just born in the wrong era. So
How do you think your buddy Kurt Angle would have done?
if he put his mind to it, and decided to learn all these submission holds and strikes and stuff, I think he'd have been amazing. But there is kind of a separation between the world of wrestling and the world of jiu-jitsu. Um, Personally, I don't see why there's a separation, but there is a separation. You don't see a lot of wrestlers going into MMA, but the ones that do go in are usually really successful because wrestling's the best foundation for a martial art. But you got to have submission holds. You got to have strikes if you're going to be cage fighting. But I think Kurt would have done great. Kurt is an Olympic champion. I mean, the guy is incredible. He plus my brother coached him, so he would have been great if he put his mind to it. He's the type of guy that when he puts his mind to anything, he becomes great at it.
Now, had you been exposed to submissions earlier, and when I think of submissions, I'm thinking like had more wrestlers been exposed to catch wrestling, which would have been the easiest transition for you guys. How do you think rolling with Hickson would have gone? Because obviously he goes on record to say that you were the toughest person he ever went against. My assertion with that has always been give Mark Schultz 1 week of submission training, and Hickson would be like a little check mark in a book. There wouldn't have been much there. That, again, my opinion, my assertion, but seeing it from both sides, from the wrestling side and the jiu-jitsu side, because I've been doing it, for so many years, I don't really think Hickson would have stood much of a chance. And again, no disrespect to anyone. I'm just looking at something objectively. Mark Schultz is here.
Yeah,
it's a different level.
What's that?
I said it's a different level. It's a different level.
Yes, I definitely would have done better than I did. I had no knowledge of any submissions. Like I said, it's against the rules of wrestling. And it's funny. After I started getting into jiu-jitsu, I used to go to the NCAA championships, and every year we had a coaches meeting, and we'd submit rule changes. And every year I would add submission holds, and of course they never did. And I think it would have been more exciting if they did. You could win by pin or by submission.
How do you think your perspective has changed, being a jiu-jitsu black belt and being the world-class wrestler that you are? How do you see jiu-jitsu as a wrestler, and how do you see wrestling as a jiu-jitsu black belt?
Personally, I didn't wrestle to win tournaments. I wrestled to learn how to fight. So to me, wrestling is kind of wrestling without jiu-jitsu it's not as effective as it is with jiu-jitsu. And jiu-jitsu without wrestling is not as effective as it is with wrestling. So to me, you got to combine the two. It's just the way it is. They just, to create the ultimate martial art, you got to combine those two. Plus, you have to add boxing and Muay Thai in to, round out your striking abilities. But the takedowns of wrestling are the best. You can't beat them. The submission holds of jiu-jitsu are the best. You can't beat them. The strikes in boxing are the best. You can't beat them. The knees and elbows and kicks of Muay Thai is the best. You can't beat them. So to combine those four martial arts together is the ultimate martial art. But to the foundation, in my opinion, has to be wrestling. Because wrestlers not only have the ability to take people down and take the fight to the ground, but they have the conditioning is what really matters in a fight or a wrestling match. It's 90% of it is conditioning. So the techniques are important, but they're not nearly as important as the conditioning. And wrestlers have the conditioning that other jiu-jitsu guys don't have. But yeah, that's my answer.
I mean, for me,
So, do you like playing guard?
no.
What's that?
Sorry, Adam.
No, you're
I
right,
just
dude.
want to know: do you like playing guard?
Go, buddy.
Was that a question?
Yeah. Do
Yeah.
you like playing guard, Mark?
What's the question?
Do you like to play guard? Ryan's asking.
Do I like playing guard? Yeah, I do. I don't have to do it very much because I'm always on top. Usually.
There you go.
That's another thing about wrestling. Wrestling inside of a wrestling room or a jiu-jitsu club is completely different than wrestling on a hard surface like the street or the ground or whatever. You slam somebody like back play them on concrete, you'll kill them.
Yeah.
They don't know. It's a completely different sport. So I don't think people take that into account when they're arguing over which is the best martial art. You have to look at what happens on the street as well as what happens in a padded room. So, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, I would just memorize all the moves that are illegal in the UFC and focus on doing those. If you're going to be in a street fight, those would be the moves to do.
Absolutely.
Adam, I didn't mean to cut you off, buddy.
No. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, catch wrestling is basically just jujitsu. But I think in catch wrestling, do they have the pin, the fall?
Yeah.
yeah.
It's pin and submit.
Well, that's basically what I was trying to do with collegiate wrestling back when I was the head. Yeah, I think Carl Gotch was a catch wrestler. He was a world champion, wasn't he? Back when
Yes.
pro wrestling was the same thing as catch wrestling.
Yeah.
Yes.
He was.
Yeah.
That what I was going to
Yeah.
ask, Brian.
I actually,
Sorry, Mark. You go on.
what?
No, talk, please. You talk. Go.
I just said I drove 6 hours from Provo, Utah, down to Las Vegas to the Cauliflower Alley Club. It's a club of pro wrestlers, and there was the multiple time world champion in pro wrestling back then. His name was Lou Thez, and he had this move called a step over toe hold, and I drove all the way down there so that he would show me the step over toe hold. And when he showed it to me, I wasn't impressed at all. This move is not that good. But yeah, that's one thing you it's against the rules in wrestling is to do toe holds. 'Cause you can cripple somebody like Mikey Musumeci. He's the limb collector. He's hurt so many guys with that ankle lock that he does, the Mikey lock. That's way more effective than the step over toe hold. So I was a little bit disappointed. I was really happy to meet Lou Thez, though, because he's such an icon in the pro wrestling world. But yeah, he was, I think, 80 something years old at the time, and here we're in his hotel room clearing out the furniture so he can, so I can get down on the ground. He can do the step over toe hold on me. Anyway,
it's funny.
it was a real fun time meeting him. And anyway, you could consider that a catch wrestling move. I don't know. It wasn't that good of a move, but I don't know. I had the advantage of being trained in jiu-jitsu, so I was able to look at the technique that he was showing me as on a different level of effectiveness that in pro wrestling you don't have to be effective at all because it's just a fake match. It's just a choreographed match, and
Yeah, I mean, look.
I don't know
the thing is that
pro
you're going to
wrestling in
get
Japan.
different story again. Yeah, pro wrestling in Japan.
The pro wrestling in Japan is a little bit more realistic looking than pro wrestling in America. In some ways, it's hard to tell whether it's real or not. Whereas in America, it's easy to tell. You just slow the film down, you can see, how his punch turns into nothing. But in Japan, uh, it's a different culture, different world. They're very isolated in Japan. They don't let outsiders in. They don't advertise outside their own country. So very hard to deal with them. But I appreciated, like Pancrase. I think Pancrase was in Japan for a while. Boss Rutan, he won the Pancrase belt. And then he had that match with Kevin Randleman. I thought Randleman beat him pretty bad, to tell you the truth. Even though they gave it to Rutan, if you just look at their faces after the match, it's pretty obvious who won that match, right? Randleman was in my weight class. I was going to have to beat him. If I had kept wrestling, I would have had to beat him to make the world team. He was
a freak.
They call him the monster. He definitely looks like a monster.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question about the Schultz headlock. How did you develop that technique? Because I teach it.
Story.
Yeah, but I want to know. I want to hear directly from the horse's mouth. How did you develop that technique? Because I quote you all the time, I copy it all the time, I teach it all the time. But give us the guidance. How did you develop it, and share the wisdom?
Well, it's a simple story. I was in the Oklahoma wrestling room one day wrestling my brother, and I shot on him, and he got me in a front headlock. And usually when people get me in a front headlock, they will have to let go in order to spin behind me. But instead of spinning behind me, Dave just stayed where he was at. And he never let go. Because usually when people as soon as they let go, I'll get hand control, I'll stand up, get my hips out in front of me, and escape before they have a chance to take me down. But this time, Dave would not let go of the front headlock. And the next thing I knew, I was laying in this pasture with these cows and these birds and these clouds, and I'm looking straight up. And he's looking down, he's straddling my face now. He's standing above me, looking down at me. And he's sweating like crazy. And it's going right into my mouth. And it's just like, I'm out cold. I'm drowning in Dave's sweat. And I wake up and just like, what the hell? How did you do that? I was so angry at him. I grabbed him by his ears and headbutted him. I was so pissed. And then I took my shirt and ripped it off. It was so humiliating, being knocked out and just helpless on the ground. And then I recovered mentally, and I asked him, how the hell did you do that? And so he showed me, and I think about 3 months later, I knocked him out with it. And that was like my birthday, Christmas, and Thanksgiving all rolled into one. So I was pretty happy about that. And so, yeah, that's how it developed.
Yeah, Val had a good question. How did Dave come up with that adjustment?
I have no idea. Huh. Dave he's a master technician. Maybe he just I couldn't tell you, but he did it differently than people who do front headlocks. Most people when they get front headlocks, they throw their opponent to the side, let go of their grip, and then go around behind. Mm. But this one, you actually throw your body perpendicular to your opponent, and you stuff your head under his armpit. And then you pull this bone right here, against the neck and just squeeze your elbows together, and that'll knock you out. And Dave would, well, Dave and me both, we would like, if we were, I've done this a couple times. I would knock somebody out, put them on their back, and then wiggle them around to make it look like they were still conscious. And then after the fall, I'd let go and act like, nothing happened.
That's cute.
Yeah. as he's coming coming back into consciousness, I let go, and he wouldn't even know what happened. When I did that in the NCAA's in 1983 to this kid named Bob Haar from Penn State. Oh man, was he pissed when he recovered and he realized what happened. Man, he attacked me like harder than anyone has ever attacked me before, and I beat him. I think it was 11-6 or something. But man, he was pissed. I don't blame him. I was pissed when Dave knocked me out. So anyway,
That's hilarious.
yeah.
Very effective technique. And it's highly underutilized, especially in the submission grappling game, because every time I teach it, people are just like, huh, what's that? I'm like, this is why you guys need to know who Mark and Dave Schultz are. You need to learn how to do this, because it's not something that you see. Like with jiu-jitsu people, you don't see it at all, because jiu-jitsu guys can't wrestle, and then they just don't understand that type of pressure and cutting those angles. But highly, highly effective, man. It's such a beautiful technique. Now, another question I had for you: Are you still doing camps and clinics now, or is that
Yes,
kind of a thing of the past? You are.
I had some medical issues, but yeah, I'm still doing camps, seminars, clinics all over the world. That's how I make a living.
So, how would people find you if they want to connect with you to get a camp or
Okay.
anything like that?
Well, my name on Facebook is MS Grappling. My name on Instagram is Mark P. Schultz. My name on Twitter is Mark Schultz with a Y at the end. I don't know why I made my name different in all the different platforms. I should have made it all the same, but it is what it is. So that's how they get a hold of me. It's sort of a convoluted story. I got to be careful about what I say, but after about 3 months of training with Pedro, I was beating everybody. I mean, everybody. And I actually started my own club in Utah at the Midvale Athletic Center. And I went to the store, and Pedro wouldn't advance me beyond a blue belt. In Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's not in America. It seems Americans, all they care about is skill, talent, ability. That's number one. But in Brazil, it's like the time you spend with the instructor uh, is what determines what belt you're going to advance to. And so I'm beating everybody pretty pretty soon after I start learning submission holds. And I start my own club at Midvale Athletic Center. And so I went to a store and I bought a black belt for $6. And I put it on, and that was my black belt. And then years later, Pedro gave me a black belt because I thought the Gracie name was it was well known, and it was it was prestigious to have a Gracie black belt. So I asked Pedro what I had to do to get my next color, which was purple. And he said to me, "You're a black belt, Mark." And I was like, "Well, I already knew that, but hearing him say that really made me happy." And so I went up to a seminar he was doing, and he gave me a black belt there. So yeah, I when I bought that black belt for $6, I'd wear it inside the BYU wrestling room, and Chael Sonnen wrestled for me at BYU, and he asked me one time, "How'd you get your black belt?" I said, "Well, I went up to Fred Meyer. I paid $6, and now I have a black belt." I said, "If anybody wants to try to take it away from me, they can go ahead and try." So that's how I got it. Yeah, I have a red belt too.
Because well, you can always make. I mean, at the end of the day, it's your grappling style is unique. So if you choose to have your own system, so to speak,
Yeah,
you can just have the Mark Schultz grappling style. You can be an infinity belt if you want, and you can give people belts in it, whatever you choose.
exactly. I mean, like, who gave Helio Gracie his red belt or whatever he wears?
Nobody gave him a black belt. He made it up.
That's right. Matter of fact, when he was in Brazil, there was only 3 belts: white, light blue, and dark blue. That was it. But I tell you, the belt system is the most genius marketing tool I've ever seen. Because if you're a grappler like me, you don't like the gi that much. But but if you don't wear a gi, there's no belt.
Yeah.
So what do you do? Yeah, yeah. Like Abu Dhabi's got gi and no gi, and Gordon Ryan. I don't think I've ever seen Gordon Ryan wear a gi. All of his matches are no gi. I don't. In the first UFC, Walt Bayless was a very good grappler up in Utah. When I first was introduced to jiu-jitsu, I found out about Walt, and we trained for a while with each other. And this guy, he tried to get into UFC 1, but they wouldn't let him in. I think because Pedro knew Walt really well, and he knew how good he was. And I think he told Horian that Walt was too good for UFC 1. He might beat Hoist. So he didn't get in. And then I think he tried to get into UFC 2 or 3, and he couldn't get in, and so he kind of gave up. But yeah, his market. Walt is not a great businessman when it comes to jiu-jitsu and stuff. He's got this club, and everybody that comes in his club, he just beats the hell out of them, and they never come back. Whereas Pedro, he doesn't allow white belts I think this is a rule now in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. White belts cannot roll with anybody until they get their blue belt. And so, yeah, Walt didn't get any students, and Pedro just collect, tons and tons of students. He's got a huge organization now. Matter of fact, he's going to be in, I think, is it Logan, Australia, next to Brisbane?
Yeah. So I'm in Logan here, and he's actually doing his seminar in Logan at my original jiu-jitsu instructors club. Because, as you know, we've talked about before, I'm a black belt with the Pedro Sauer Association as well here. So we're from the same association, basically. And yeah, one of the guys, my older original jiu-jitsu instructors in Logan, and that's where Pedro's coming to do his seminar next month.
Yes, in November, I think.
It is November, yeah, correct. November, sorry.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when are you going to be back out on the circuit, Mark? Because I would love to come to one of your clinics or figure out how to get you down here to Southern California, or even if I get up there and do some private training with you or something. But, I need to experience the Great One firsthand.
Yeah. I'm still doing seminars and clinics and stuff. I could come to Southern California. I don't have well, I use the Southern Oregon, the South Medford Wrestling Room for like working out and stuff. But yeah, I can come to Southern California if you want. You can contact me. You have my contact information?
I can get it from Adam. We can just coordinate and get something going.
We'll work something out. What part of Southern California are you in?
I'm in Orange County.
Okay.
Yeah. And I teach out of a high school wrestling room. So it's just like, that's just how it's easier than a freestanding location. And the funny thing is, I've kind of learned the hard way, because I call like my school's called PCI Jiu-Jitsu. I call it a hybrid grappling system because I mix everything together. Like I will not rank anybody if, number one, all of my classes start standing. So you have to learn how to wrestle, and there's a lot of the jiu-jitsu I throw out, probably about 85% of jiu-jitsu I throw out because I don't think it works when you're actually wrestling and fighting. And there's a lot of wrestling I don't use because I don't want people falling in between somebody's legs into the guard, right? So my whole thing is always have a vision of the fight as a complete picture. But what one of the things that I learned is when you don't have a freestanding location and you're not teaching patty cake and butt scooting, when somebody learns say a Schultz headlock, they typically don't want to come back and they don't want to be conditioned in the right way. So Adam and I share this pain where we don't have the most number of students, but when we get students, they come to condition and train hard and wrestle the right way, like the Schultz way. We don't pussyfoot around.
Yeah, that's a hard way to run a business. Businesses, they kind of have to appeal to the middle class or the middle group. They have to, and if you're focusing all your attention on the elite guys, which that's how they get better. You're harder on the elite guys than you are on the beginners and the intermediate guys because, first of all, the elite guys want to be pushed. They need to be pushed. And it's just, they're a different breed, and it's very hard to build a business when you're focusing on just the elite guys because people can't tolerate that kind of training. Most people can't tolerate it.
100%.
It's just too hard. But yeah, well, if you want to do a seminar, we can work it out. I go to California. I go to California all the time. I go to Palo Alto, the Bay Area,
Mhm.
mainly, but Southern California is just another 6 hours south of Palo Alto. I can either fly or drive. I have a motorcycle. I love driving my motorcycle. Dangerous.
What kind of motorcycle? What kind of motorcycle do you have?
It's Suzuki Boulevard. Eight,
How do you
eight.
like those? You like the
I like
Boulevard?
it a lot because it's really super loud. So everybody hears me. They change the the pipes to make it louder. So you know how people they say you can't see motorcycles. Well, you might not be able to see me, but you're definitely going to hear me.
That's
Anyway,
awesome.
I love that motorcycle. I have to wear earplugs when I drive, but I've driven it to Palo Alto a couple times and driven it back, so it's not a problem for me. But yeah, I've got a bunch of friends in Southern California. Matter of fact, my coach at UCLA, Mark Black, is now the executive director of the California chapter of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame, and we just inducted my high school coach Ed Hart into the California chapter, and Mark lives in he's at Samo High, Santa Monica High School.
Yes.
Anyway, he's been the coach there for years. And I did a seminar down there one time, and so I got friends and stuff that I can see if I go to Southern California. It's not a big deal for me. So, yeah,
Well,
anytime you want, let me know.
thank you. This has been an absolute pleasure, Mark. You are a legend. You and Dave, both absolute legends. And like I was telling you before we started, I'll never forget the Anaheim Convention Center 1984 Olympics. And I don't recall another time in history, Olympic history, where two sets of brothers win gold.
There's never been
Never,
no
right?
two brothers have ever won in the same Olympics. And
Yeah.
that year we had two sets of brothers winning.
Two sets of brothers, yeah.
But my brother and we are the winningest brothers in American history. We've won more NCAA, World, Olympic, U.S. Open titles than any brother combination in history, and we're the only brothers to win the Olympics and the World Championships. Dave won in '83, and I won in '85 and '87. The other two brothers are the Satievs and the
Mhm.
Beloglazovs. They, yeah, I spent the other day watching Adam Satiev wrestle. Man, you want to see a good wrestler. Adam
Incredible.
Satiev may be the best wrestler that ever lived. And this dude is just like a machine. Anyway, uh, yeah, his brother Buvasar died this year. He was
Yes.
49 years old. He died of a heart attack. And one year, Buvasar gave his spot on the Russian world team to his brother Adam, and Adam won the worlds that year. I guess they were the same weight class, but they must have split their weight classes because they both won the Olympics the same year and the worlds the same year. So, but yeah, when Buvasar was asked who the best wrestler in the world was, he said, "My brother Adam," and I can see why. I mean,
Have you
Buvasar's got a lot more titles, but Adam's
have
world.
you seen have you watched Kamsat Chimaev fight?
Yes.
Yeah, he's the current middleweight world champion. Just absolutely wrecked Dricus Duplessis recently. He trained under the Satiev brothers. Incredible. wrestler and just
Oh, he
incredibly
trained
dominant.
with the Satievs?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know what part of Russia the Satievs are from? Are they from Dagestan?
I don't know.
You know?
I don't know. I know that Kamzat is
George
Chechen.
Chechen.
Okay. Well, there's a bunch of
So
Chechens in Dagestan too.
yeah, all those guys, that whole area. I know because I read a story before. Didn't Dave go train there a lot? Like he was going to Russia to train, and he learned Russian to cross train.
Um, I don't. He's been to Russia probably more than any other American wrestler. He wrestled in the Tbilisi tournament so many times, and he's the only American to win it twice. And there's a really funny story about how he won his second gold medal at Tbilisi. He got injured in the semifinals, and between matches, he would go up into the stands to talk with the fans because he wanted to practice his Russian. So they just loved him because he was always talking to them. And so he makes it to the finals, but he's injured in the semifinals and his shoulder's all taped up. He can't really shoot, but he can kind of defend himself. So he keeps the match 0-0 in the finals. And they raise the Russians' hand because the Russia was the aggressor. And the entire crowd starts yelling and screaming and throwing cokes and tomatoes and beer bottles onto the mat. And the referees recongregated, had another meeting, and decided for the first time in history they were going to award 2 gold medals at that weight class. So that's how Dave won his second Tbilisi gold medal.
Wow.
Anyway, Zeke Jones, the coach of that team, was looking at this scene, and he thought he was in the Twilight Zone. I mean, these Russians are screaming for Dave, who's an American, to for a victory over their own countrymen. It was crazy.
Classic.
But that's how much Dave changed the world when he was wrestling. It's real
Indeed.
influential.
Well,
Yeah.
let's wrap it up here. Mark, it's been such an honor and a pleasure, sir. And you and your brother have been such an influence on American wrestling and definitely my style and what I teach. And I cannot thank you enough for sharing your story with us today and participating with us. You're a true legend and just a world-class human being. And thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Oh,
Appreciate
thank you,
it, sir.
Brian. Thanks, Val. Thanks, Adam.
Pleasure, my
Seeing
friend.
you guys.
We'll talk again
Contact me
soon.
anytime.
All right, guys, we are out of here.